Crisis always offers opportunity. Crisis that I had was pretty bad.
My director stole $3.5 million.
Had that incident not happened to me, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now.
If you don't stand out or you don't go the extra mile, you're going to get left behind.
I've turned down multi-million contracts. And until today, I think it's very hard to break the record of what we did. The first time I was introduced to this big account, I was bullied then by the buyers. Millennials now are the key people in strategic positions for leadership. The biggest obstacles right now, even in sales, is that number one, you still do the same thing you've been doing for the past 20 years, you're going to be left out.
And now the man you've been waiting for, John, the sales machine, Rankins!
Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is one of the Philippines' most respected business speakers, authors, and consultants. With over 3 decades of experience, he has mentored top corporations, leaders, and entrepreneurs to success. He's authored 26 books and is renowned for his insights on leadership and sales strategies. He is the Philippines' most followed business leader on LinkedIn. He has over 275,000 followers. I call him King Kong. He is an amazing man and has helped businesses, the biggest businesses all throughout the Philippines. Let's welcome Francis Kong.
Thank you. Now, is that official or are you just practicing?
That's official, 100%.
Oh, that's official.
Francis, you're one of the biggest influencers in the Philippines, and you work with all of the top companies in the Philippines, and you work with the top companies in the Philippines, including a lot of the different banks. Tell me, how did this journey to becoming one of the biggest influencers in Asia start out?
I created a name in business by building a garments company and inventing a local jeans brand that became very famous. So that's where people began noticing me. But what a lot of people did not know was listening to your own story about where you began. It reminded me of my earlier days when my first job and exposure into the garments industry was not glamorous at all. I was fixing show windows and changing clothes from mannequins to mannequins. And that got me into a very unique position to question myself and to think like a victim, right? I mean, most people with a Chinese background, they're born rich. All they needed to do is to wait for their parents to die and then take over their business. I mean, there's nothing there for me. So I had to start working. And then, the only problem with fixing show windows is that windows are transparent. And my friends would look at me and they'll laugh at me and they'll say, look at this guy, look at the job he's doing. So there's a constant struggle in my mind saying that this is humiliating and why am I a victim? But at the same time, the other voice that keeps on bugging me was, so what? No job, as long as it's an honest money-earning job, is robbed of nobility. So I decided to stick it out. But rather than feeling that victim all the time, I started to study the industry. And there were 3 books written by 3 authors that radically changed my life. And I'll remember this would be the books of Zig Ziglar, 3 authors, the books that they wrote. The other one would be Jim Rohn. And the other one who turned out to be my mentor and my friend, Dr. Dennis Waitley. They changed the way I would think. And from that time on, I set my eyes on a higher goal. So here I am fixing show windows and mannequins. The good thing about dealing with mannequins is they don't talk back, right? And then I said, but this is not the life I wanted. So let's take a look at the next goal. I want to be in sales. And then I look at all the veteran salespeople in our company. They were not learning things. They were not studying. They were, they were almost every night partying. And I reasoned to myself, I said, these guys, they're going to lose it one day. And so there they were partying, and here I was studying. But you see, I built up the courage in presenting myself to the boss and would say, the next time you're going to be having your own sales meeting, why don't you include me there? And this guy sort of looked at me and he said, well, what does this guy changing mannequins has to do with our meeting? And I reasoned it out and I said, in order for me to do my job better, I need to know your directions. So if I happen to be there, maybe the way I would present the showcases, the windows, would be more relevant to increasing your sales. Because at that time, I realized that the most important radio station until today is still WIIFM. What's in it for me? So I would have to say, if I can do this and increase your sales, and they say, yeah, he's right, why don't we include him in the meeting? There, I started studying all the intricacies of sales and all the struggles that were going on and all the dynamics behind me. I was learning, man. I was learning. So one day, the prophecy came to pass. One of them was booted out because he was doing moonlighting. The other one was poached. So there was an open space. And the boss looked around and he said, should we get somebody else? But this guy seems to be knowing what he's doing now. And so I was given the opportunity now to go into sales, given the smaller accounts. That's where you start, right? And that's okay. Now, I would run to this veteran salesman and try to get some bits and pieces of information that would help me with my work, and they won't do that. They're not going to share their secrets, right? In fact, they bullied me. He says, you're a newcomer, bring us coffee and bring us cigarettes. And I said, okay. Because the number one most important thing is to earn their trust. And you can't earn their trust until you intentionally build a relationship with them. Let them bully me. I mean, how far can they go anyway? So after a while, they began sharing their secrets with me. And I was learning again until such time as I was given bigger accounts. Now, the biggest account that happened to be the most desirous of every salesperson was given to me. And that got me into trouble, man. These guys are saying, this new guy's given the biggest account. What's happening there? And the first time I was introduced to this big account, I was bullied then by the buyers. And I was looking at the way they would insult, salespeople and sales agent. And there were two kinds of salespeople that I witnessed and I observed. You see, what is important for me, because I read somewhere that says, if the student is ready, the teacher appears, and the whole world is a classroom. So I was observing, and I said, there are two kinds of salespeople here. One kind of people, despite being bullied, they still suck up to these buyers. That's not the kind of salespeople I want to be. The other kind of salespeople are so composed. They'll leave their stuff there. They'll grab a little bit of their insults and their bullying, but they remain professional. And I said, but there's got to be a third choice here. Let's apply the WIIFM now on these buyers, right? Now, I'm a risk taker. I'm an early adopter. I would do my research on fashion. I will discover what are the latest trending in the jeans industry, and I would present crazy stuff, and the buyers would berate me in front of everybody, and he says, who in his right mind would present a damaged sample? And I look at the buyer and I say, excuse me, sir, I damage it on purpose. He said, who in his right sane mind would damage his own sample and present it to us? And I said, sir, respectfully, that's going to be the trend. He says, who told you that a damaged sample would be a trend. And I said, could you hold on to your horses? And then from my back pocket, I'm going to pull out the magazine clipping and show him this latest trend, which we now called distressed jeans. And I said, I purposely damaged that pair of jeans, in order to show you the trend where we're going to go. And you can see the horror on the face of this merchandiser, meaning to say, he's not doing his job. He doesn't even know what's coming in, right? And then he will look at me and he said, leave your sample and the magazine clipping. Now, I'm going to show you back this question. You put yourself now in the shoes of the buyer. Why would he want that magazine clipping to be left there? So I was thinking, I said, I got him. Why? Because he's going to show off to his boss. And he's going to bring exactly what I have presented, and to tell his boss, boss, do you know what's coming in? This is a new trend. But you see, the business owners are not that dumb. They know the capacity of their people. So the next thing that's going to happen outside from my purview is this. Where did you get that idea from? That guy couldn't squeeze himself out of that situation. He's going to say, well, I got this from one of these salespeople. And the next thing, the owner of the business would say, call him for a meeting. I want to talk to him. There you go. I got my foot inside the door now. And then I prepared myself. I studied a lot more. I brought more materials. And from that time on, every time I want to leave the sample, I skip the process of leaving it to this guy. And the owner of the business now wants me to go and present to him directly. There, I realize you're not just a salesperson. You are there as a consultant.
Come on.
And before you be a consultant, you got to learn first. And you got to bring the materials. And you got to do a presentation. I never knew that would be the beginning stage of what I'm doing right now. Because as of today, when I do training left and right, here and there, I'm still selling and I'm still presenting. And I'm equipping the people now with new ideas that can help them become better in their business or in their...
Our salespeople aren't any good at sales. But when I went deeper, it's not about the salespeople. It's not about the product. In actuality, your training is inadequate. You are living in the dinosaur ages, and or you're using boiler room tactics and pressure, and you're stressing out the salespeople. So they're not in service. They're just trying to push product instead of really helping people. Can you talk about your experience in actually discovery and finding out what a client needs? Because that's brilliant.
What I have done would practically violate every sales book that you can find, because I've turned down multi-million contracts because I know that's not what they need. So these clients would come and say, Francis, we need this training, we need this learning, and you're an expert there. You know, you came from the garments industry, and this is a garments company that we have, multinational, and so forth and so on. And I said, after consultants are like organizational doctors. You have to ask questions and figure out what it is that's causing the problem, right? And after listening to him, I said, I'm not what you need. I love the prospect of making money from you. I mean, this contract is lucrative, but I won't be able to solve your problem. Here's what my recommendations are. And I won't even charge him for that. I said, you might need an organizational expert to fix your organization, fix your system, and then fix your software, and then get everything done. You know why? Because I may earn his money now, but if it doesn't help him with his problem, he's going to blame me later. And he's going to say, I thought Francis is good and he's usable and he can help us. No, I spent a lot of money and nothing happened. So I'm not going to risk my reputation and credibility just by earning a little bit of my money that guy is going to give out without helping him. So I would refer him to somebody whom I would think would be able to solve his problem. And guess what? Once his problem and his systems are now fixed, he'll get me back. Because in doing so, he would realize that I'm not just after his money or I'm just after my own personal benefit. I have actually have the concern to want him to become better. And therefore, these are the magic words. I have earned the right to be heard. Now he brings me back. And now let me take a look. Okay, now I can do it.
Yeah, and that turns into 10 more clients, right? And this is what Zig Ziglar says about service, solving problems, making sure they're satisfied. And guess what? When they're satisfied, they're going to bring you 10 more clients. And you piss off one and you don't deliver, especially when you're dealing with, you know, high profile companies. And I come from the same mindset. If I cannot help you, I'll find a way to help you, regardless if it helps me or not, because I just believe in that psychology that Zig Ziglar has. Now, how did you go from the garment industry and then setting up your own company to actually becoming this revered consultant that's, sought after by the biggest companies in the Philippines?
Um, Crisis always offers opportunity. And the crisis that I had was pretty bad. It's when my partners took my business away from me. And that left me hanging. And at that time, I remember all my kids were little, and I gathered them in a room, and I said, your dad is going to say something you may not like hearing. Your dad has lost the business. I don't have any other business yet. But you don't want to dampen their hopes. And I said, but don't worry. Your mom is the best treasurer I've ever met in my life. So she's got some savings there. But the reason why I'm telling you all of this is that when daddy says, tighten up your belts, please do not complain. We're going through some rough times now. Had that incident not happened to me, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. And so that forced me to enter into, and the rest were providential. I mean, with the little money that I have left, that was the time when somebody was asking me, I wish we can bring John Maxwell to the Philippines and have him speak. And I said, I know the go-to guy that can bring him here. So with the little money left, I'm a risk taker. I invested in it. And until today, I think it's very hard to break the record of what we did. We had Maxwell come, we filled in Araneta Coliseum, and then the next day we filled in PICC, made a little money out of that. And then Maxwell comes to us and says, I'm pretty impressed with what you did. Why don't you represent me and take over my training program in the Philippines? So the little money that I made, I have to risk it again and invest in flying to Atlanta to be given the accreditation and license to hold his training programs here. And that instantaneously propelled me to become a professional trainer and a speaker. So today, the lesson that I can learn from that is very, very easy. At that crucial point in your crisis and your difficulty, just when the pieces seem to be falling apart, it may be that inflection moment when God is putting the pieces in its rightful place. Today, you can't convince me that crisis that I had turned out to be a blessing for me. So that got me into this. It's a crisis situation that propels me to consider other choices that I had to do without feeling like a victim all the time. Life is unfair. And so you always look at the opportunities, even in the midst of a crisis.
Yeah, I love it. And, there's a lot of people out there that are in crisis, whether they're business owners or just starting out, and or even if they're turning over their business to the next generation. And I believe it was Jim Rohn who said it first, life is happening for you, not to you.
Right.
Even in my own journey, I played victim. Earlier on, I'd lost my first business. My director stole $3.5 million, blacklisted me from a country. And I remember leaving that country on a boat. I went from from Batam Island to Singapore to restart everything. And it wasn't until that moment when I realized I had lost it all that I actually hadn't lost it all. But until I could really own it, that like literally I broke down on that boat. It was a ferry boat and I wept, right? I felt like I failed myself. I failed my family. I failed my organization. But at one point, I just realized that, never again will this define me like a business failure, because it's got to happen. I have to accept that I'm still responsible for everything that happens in my life. And I don't know where the good is in this yet, but I'm going to find it. So I can definitely relate to what you were saying, playing victim, especially when you're starting out. I remember going to school as a boy, and this is related to your fashion. And when I went to school as a boy, my mom couldn't afford much. So I got hand-me-downs from my older brother. Tough skin jeans. And they had holes in them. And people made fun of us because we had holes in our jeans, right?
Today you should be proud if you're wearing jeans with holes, right?
Yeah, and now it's the fashion, man. Like if I would have just been born 20 years later, I would have been hip. People would have been like, you're the shit. Like, you're amazing. Like, the trends. Right, man. Life's not fair. Life will knock you down, but life's still beautiful. I love that. And what would you say now? Like, you work with big organizations, and what would you say is the biggest obstacle when you work with organizations as far as scaling their sales?
Behind every big organizations is one factor that you can never afford to ignore. It's still the people. And the biggest obstacle here is that with the demographic disruption, meaning to say, boomers are out. Either they're the business founders or they're the chairman. Gen X will be on their way out, where they're retiring soon. Millennials now are the key people in strategic positions for leadership, but now they're handling Gen Z people. In our own company, 2 years ago, we had about 10% Gen Zers. Last year, we had 20%. By 2030, you're going to have 70% of your workplace populated by Gen Zers. And each generation carries with them different values, different behaviors, and different capability. The biggest obstacles right now, even in sales, is that number one, the traditional way of doing selling will have to undergo different challenges, number one. The relationship we used to build with the procurement officers and the people who are used to doing business with us, they probably are on their way out too. And they're going to be replaced by younger people. So there's absolutely no relationship now with the new people coming in. And my business experience tells me whenever there's a new person coming in, that new leader will always want to reorganize. And maybe the old relationship with the old suppliers and the old vendors will no longer be there because this guy has to do his job. And he or she will now prefer somebody else new. Next is technology. So, as I would often say, the old principles in effective selling will never change. Principles don't change. But the behavior and the mannerism and the instruments and the way you express and the way you sell, they will always change. And now, whether you like it or not, in whatever industry we are in, I would say that whatever industry and whatever company we are running, it is to be seen as a tech company. And I learned this lesson from the owner and the founder of a popular Japanese, the number one Japanese clothing brand in the world. And he says, we're not a garments company. We are a tech company. So you have to dig deeper and figure out, why is this guy saying this? Well, number one, Every company positions themselves to be a tech company because if you position your organization as a tech company, you have higher valuations. Today, it's not tech, it's AI. You have to be empowered by AI, right? So it's always changing. But in whatever industry and whatever function we are in, we are governed by tech. So tech has to be there. And knowing what's trending in business right now, every business owner and the big businesses, in fact, this is something that is a reality that we have to face. They always want to kill the middle. So technology affords that. So you go straight to the consumer or you go straight to whatever, but you can't remove and eliminate the sales force because they still have to bring it into the market. So these are the challenges now. And if you still do the same thing you've been doing for the past 20 years, you're going to be left out. And you still don't know technology, you're going to be left out. And you don't know the changing behavior of the new consumers coming into the market, you're going to be left out. In other words, you will be left out. So those are the obstacles now.
Yeah, and more than ever, I always like to talk about there's two types of companies out there: the quick
And the debt.
and the dead. And it's more relevant now than ever before because in the last 20 years, I mean, literally the cell phones were just coming out and Facebook and all of these different social media platforms. Now we got AI. And the reality is people have more choices than ever before. And literally, like in America, you can order something and it'll be there on your doorstep from Amazon the same day. So not only do they have more choices, it's easier to purchase. And if you don't stand out or you don't go the extra mile, you're going to get left behind. There's lots of organizations that refuse to embrace technology, like the Blockbuster Netflix story. See you later, Blockbuster. And they could have bought Netflix for, I believe, like $7 million. And they didn't. And now they're bankrupt and Netflix is worth I don't know how many billions of dollars. And it's happened again and again. Like you said, Steve Jobs had a clue, and he was great at cross-pollinating technology and or other people's ideas. Like the iPod had the wheel of Bang Olufsen, but he stole that, right? He stole the mouse, but he knew how to cross-pollinate it and create more value with the better mousetrap. The BlackBerry, he's like, and the Pilot, where these old technologies, you had to carry around a stylus, and he's like, we all have one.
Yeah.
It's called a finger, right? So he's just brilliant in cross-pollinating ideas. And what ideas, based on the principles that never change, they will not change, know, like, and trust, people will buy from you more often and faster than ever before. Because, even if you talk about technology and Asia, because I've lived in Southeast Asia for 30 years, very low credit card usage, very low amount of the population having credit cards, very few people buying online. And then all of a sudden you have a black swan event, COVID. Now people get credit cards. Now people want to buy on Lazada, Shopee. Before COVID, you never walked around and heard phones going off all the time. Shopee, Shopee, Shopee. So that black swan event changed things, but the principles of sales have not changed. What ideas and or thoughts do you have about cross-pollinating the old principles and delivering them in a new way with the new generation that will be most effective in sales?
And it's a very good thing that you brought out the cases of Blockbuster. And you first have to understand, why is it that people are resistant to change? Blockbuster refuses the suggestion of subscription model because actually, the proposal here was, look, why don't we get these CDs and then mail it, right? and then we can cover a bigger area. They don't want to because WIIFM for them, they were making a lot of money through punishing those late returnees. That's where they get revenues. Now you go a little bit earlier. You see, a lot of things that we can anticipate about the future is by studying the past. Learn from the history of these guys. What killed Kodak? Digital camera, right? Yeah, but who invented the digital camera? It's this engineer inside Kodak. Why was it turned down? Because Kodak was not a film company. Kodak was a chemical company. They made money processing films. So they said, if this one happens, you don't need chemicals anymore. What's going to happen to our business? So the number one resistant factor is that people still want to protect the sources of their revenues without understanding and seeing from where can we get new revenues. So that is a very pillar that's not very addressed too much. So now we go back to your original question. So what are the old things and principles that withstand all of these changes? There are three basic consumer behaviors that will never change. Number one, and this I would say is temporary, it will evolve. Number one, customers still want a product or a service that is of reliable acceptability and quality. So when you order from Amazon and through drone, it delivers the stuff into your doorstep within the next 3 hours because if you're a Prime member, so you will begin to say, I wish this product comes in the right color and the right size without dent, and that's okay for me. In the US, you can return it, and many of them do. Here, it's a little bit inconvenient to return, but of acceptable quality will be okay. But then that will evolve because you still have to go the extra mile. You still have to present a better thing than just acceptability. The second consumer behavior that will never change is consumers want a product or a service that is there when needed. And that's why logistics play into a very big picture. I mean, you can do all the sales talk that you can give. Your product is the best product in the world. But when the consumer is needed and it's not there, we haven't served, have we? And number three, this is one thing that has never disappeared, but now amplified in many ways, in many levels. This is empathy. People still want to do business with a vendor that cares. It's not just pushing the product and earning the money. Because we used to have a statement that I hate so much. Just get the sucker to sign on the dotted line and we have business. No, that's not the way it has to be. There's got to be a relationship. There's got to be a trust there. And the clients should know that we really care for them. So those are the three major principles that will never change.
I agree. And, that's connecting the dots in a way where even the young generation can embrace. Like I created a 7-step process called sales. It's called SaaS, but it's sales as a service. And the first and foremost thing is all about the connection, like connecting to people about where they're at and what are their needs. Because ultimately, sales are still about relationships, and people talk more and more about AI and AI replacing sales. And, obviously America is like advanced is in, in the marketplace and competition. They have laws that, destroy monopolies so that people can compete. And, that's the American dream. It's not like that everywhere in the world. However, AI is going to level the playing field as far as being a co-pilot. And that's how I see AI. AI is my co-pilot. It's ultimately never going to create a relationship that I can create by or through empathy like you talk about. But why don't you speak about what are your thoughts on AI and how it's going to affect, a salesperson, the sales industry, and where do you see it going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I have I've always been of the position that computers will never replace humans until today. That issue has been in question when personal computer came into the picture because of two Steves in the garage with nothing better to do than to create a dent in the universe, saying that we're gonna bring computer and made it personal. So people were afraid. The only people who were replaced were bank tellers. They were replaced by ATMs, right? But the bank tellers are still there. And I have been of the persuasion that says technology cannot replace a teacher, but a teacher with technology can replace a teacher without until today. Because in our own company, we replace 4 copywriters with 1 professional writer and with ChatGPT 4.0. That technology alone can churn out a lot more stuff than all these guys banded together and in just a few seconds. So that alone opened my eyes and said, and we're just at the beginning phase of AI. However, let's not hype it too much. I will pull a line from Amos Tversky, who says, a lot of people study artificial intelligence. Me, I'm interested in natural stupidity. So to think that AI can replace people with a dystopian view watching Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator coming in, that's just way out of line. AI is still a tool that can increase our productivity, but you got to be there knowing how it operates and how to use it, because once you're going to catch up, you're going to be left behind. But here's the key. While a lot of people are still studying AI, I'm anticipating deep learning and quantum computing because that's going to come in next. And if quantum computing now can absorb data and get all the contents of Wikipedia in just minutes or seconds, what would that mean? Well, it simply means the world is going to run out of data. So no wonder right now, these tech giants, they keep on with the privacy thing there. They're still thinking of ways on how to gather more data and gather more data. Because that's, a couple of years ago, we used to say data. In the Philippines, we pronounce it data. Data is the new oil. No, oil fluctuates in price, but data is going to be the most expensive thing that's needed in an AI, quantum computing, deep mind, saturated society, and that offers me opportunity.
100%. And banks have been doing this for years, forecasting trends. I recently hired a banker, and I've now trained her in sales and found out that the bank, after having worked at 2 of the biggest prominent banks here in the Philippines, she didn't know how to sell at all. And the banks actually invested nothing in technology for the frontline salespeople. They invest billions of dollars on the back end for the data to forecast trends and or to not just forecast trends, but figure out more and more what will the customers buy based on the data and their buying behavior, and how many, whether it's a loan, a car loan, a home loan, small business loan, all the way up to what credit cards will be suitable, what the interest rates they can charge for those credit cards. And now, and they're getting smarter and smarter, adding on, insurance providers, up sales, down sales, but they've invested no money in technology for that salesperson. Have you worked with banks? And I was blown away when I found out, because I presented my tech and software to a couple different banks, and they're actually blown away. But more so than them is I've interviewed the salespeople, and I've used the data from those salespeople to figure out how many hours a day can I save a bank from one salesperson. And after having interviewed several of the salespeople, they're like, well, this would have saved my life. I would have been able to sell twice the amount of time because this would save me 3 to 4 hours. And I said, well, what is the technology you're currently using? And she shows me a notebook with the business cards in there stapled and Excel spreadsheets. And they're like, we spend, 40% of our time entering data and then calling back to confirm the data. And I'm like, this is insane. Imagine we can save banks for 3 hours a day, 1,000 salespeople. How many man hours are we saving them? And then how much more would those salespeople be able to sell and generate in new business rather than doing data entry, which a salesperson shouldn't be doing? What has been your experience with organizations not figuring out what I call not ROI, not the return on the investment, but COI?
The cost of investment, is it?
The cost of inaction.
Inaction. All right, got it. Well, the reality is that survey has continuously supported the research that says salespeople are only spending about 41% of their time doing actual sales. They're just too busy filing up reports and everything. Now, that's where technology comes into the picture because automation frees you enough time to do the most important function that salespeople should be doing, and that's selling. And that's facing up now. In fairness, as an entrepreneur and as a client of the banks, right? And many of these banks are my client as well. In fairness, you see, the Philippines is still very much relationship marketing and relationship selling, right? Nothing beats a bank manager sitting down, having lunch with a client, and still talking about stories about other people. That's where intelligence gathering comes into the picture. No data analytics can ever do that. That's in Filipino, we have a term called marites. That's gathering gossips, right?
Chismis. I didn't even know that. I used to tell my people, and I used to ask them, because, Philippines are the best at the world or world leaders in certain things. First of all, no one in the history of the world can compete with Manny Pacquiao and what he's done. It's fact. And I mean, when I first came to the Philippines and watched people, go to cafes or, use movie theaters to promote his fights. And I just became such a fan of what he had accomplished. Just amazing. If there was an Olympic medal or, the GOAT, greatest of all time, all the different weight classes that this guy was able to go to the top of the world, nothing to talk about. Doesn't matter what country he's from, but he just happens to be from the Philippines. Total badass, total respect. But if there was an Olympic medal, what other sport in the Philippines besides billiards, which I don't know if you want to call that a sport, but there's some brilliant billiard players in the Philippines. But overall, no other country could ever compete with the Philippines if Miss was a competition.
Well, the best way to achieve effective communications is the 5 magic words. Don't tell anyone about this.
I remember when I first heard this story about Meritus, and I love the Philippines because as far as what you're saying and what I'm saying, and I know I'm just poking fun, Filipinos would win a gold medal in relationships.
Correct.
So I haven't put that out there enough, but it's true. Because I've traveled the world. I've been to over 40 countries. I literally have built and scaled sales teams in 7 countries, physically there, other countries by just training. And everywhere I've been, in almost every airport in the world, my observation is whenever you see 2 Filipinos in an airport, they will come from across corridors, hallways, and they'll say hi to each other. Where are you from? What province are you from? And I've never seen any other country in the world where people were so loving to each other. And before this podcast, we were talking about that. Philippines is very unique in Asia about their openness and their openness to caring for one another. You do not see that in any country in Asia besides the Philippines.
We're very relational, sometimes to a fault.
Yeah, because a lot of organizations are going to get left behind even here because of AI or automation, because the companies, like you said earlier, that are really going to be about the future, it doesn't even matter if they're selling apparel. They're a tech company. They're a tech company who's using the data of what people buy globally. And that's why they're a tech company, regardless of apparel, because they're using that data to forecast trends, to invest in the next trends. Uniqlo's not stupid. They're not. People thought it's crazy that they're spending $100 million on Djokovic, but they have the data. And so they invest in an influencer that they already know is going to triple sales.
That's true. When you take a look at the evolution of sales, for example, there was a time when they said that only extroverts are good salespeople. The best way to get sales is to be a master in sales talking. I remember that when I was growing up. Then eventually, you begin to see research that would say, yeah, sales, the ability to sales talk is there, but you need to have gut feel. You need to have the competence and the confidence. Yeah. But now, here's the truth. Research will continue to support the fact that introverted people are the best salespeople you can find. Simply for 2 words. They follow through. Extroverts are very happy presenting, and then they move on to the next one. They derive their energy and excitement with meeting people and everything else. Sometimes they may not be very good with following through. But now we're in the world wherein there's nonstop information hitting us from all over the place. We are easily distracted. Following through becomes a skill that is very important and needed. Now, here's another thing. Rather than just saying that gut feel is important, and I still think it is, but you exercise gut feel only after you have interpreted and understood the data. Because without data, your gut feel simply means you're just guessing. But with data now, and the right interpretation, by the way, just because you have a lot of data doesn't mean you're wiser. You have to learn how to dig deep into the data that you need that adequately supports your decision. Then your gut feel now operates and say, yeah, this decision is out of our rule books, but we got to do this in order to achieve the best results. So things are changing.
100%. And there's psychological there's psychological studies out there that have proven that people do like to buy from people that they know, like, and trust, number one. Number two, they like to buy from people who are also like them. Number three, the example you gave from introverts and extroverts, the behavior of an extrovert is to be outgoing, to be vibrant, to always have to know what is the next thing to say, and they talk a lot. The best people in the sales, they don't talk. They listen. Introverts listen more than they speak. In America, like especially the trends in the biggest tech companies in the world, I know the people that are number one in Salesforce, number one in HubSpot. Steve Wozniak, I've interviewed Steve Wozniak about how Steve Jobs could sell one to many globally, but he would do a lot of pausing. And even on his stages, he would ask a lot of questions, question-based selling. So I agree with you 100%. Introverts speak less. And organizations in America, now they have technology that times the amount, that tracks the amount of time a salesperson speak. And when they wear headphones and or they're making sales, if they are speaking more than the prospect over 50%, they get warnings in their ear.
Oh, they do.
You're talking too much. Is this crazy? And even now with AI, I'm working with different companies with AI. So not only can you track the amount of speaking that the individual's doing, which should be 30%. The prospect should be selling himself, expressing his needs, and then you should be digesting how you can align your solution with his needs in an ethical manner, in an empathetic manner. And more, you've heard of disc test and different personalities.
Strengths Finder and all those.
You need to align with how they buy, not how you sell, and adjust to the audience. And it's proven. HubSpot became a $100 million company in 7 years. And they did something unlike everybody else in the industry. And Mark Roberge was on my podcast, who built HubSpot to the first 10,000 customers. Now they're a $30 billion company. They only did inbound marketing where they created blogs, they created value, and everybody called them. Built, $30 billion company. What most people don't know is Salesforce actually invested in them early on, and then they cut ties because they realized HubSpot was getting too big. But Aaron Ross, he built Salesforce, and now it's, the number one gig out there. Very expensive for companies now. They've priced themselves out of the market as far as small and medium. Done it through outbound marketing, however, through value, sending out value. So the landscape has changed so much in sales. And I think, I know and I believe it's a beautiful thing, because there's now more empathy out there, and the companies that don't embrace it, and the principles you're talking about, they truly are going to get left behind, especially if they don't embrace tech, even if they're banks, because one bank manager can only sit down with so many people a day. Whereas with technology and or salespeople, what Aaron Ross did with Salesforce is he cut out all of the admin and all of the unnecessary things that were being given to the sales people to do, and he created the SDR role. So the sales development people, they're the ones who researched the company. Those are the ones who gathered the websites of the company, qualified the prospects, so that when a salesperson got on, and an SDR could do that with 100 people a day. And when the salespeople got on, they're doing 20 demos a day, and they can close a higher amount of prospects and serve more people. So I love what you said. There's no greater way to sell through the relationships and empathy. However, organizations in the future are going to be so much more prepared, like you were when you made that first sale to become a salesperson. You made the sale to your boss to join the sales meeting. You made that sale.
Yeah. Their relationship is still very important. As a matter of fact, after this one, I rushed to do a webinar with the company. And it is because the first time we did it, I had very poor internet signal. Now, I can easily say, it's not our fault. It's the internet's fault. It's the signal's fault. You don't do that if you develop the relationship, right? Because for me, I delivered a failed product, even though you can't blame me for that. So what we did was we offered them, which is tonight, after this, I'm going to give you another one, and you don't have to pay me because we can't sleep. We know we did not deliver an excellent product. That relationship now will convert itself into what Seth Godin deeply believed in word of mouth marketing. And it's not because I want more business. It is because these guys paid me and they deserve the best. And I can't sleep until I know I've given them my best. And that has been the pattern of what has kept me in this industry for 25 years or more? Because that drive is still the same. It will never change. You go for what would be of the best interest for your clients and not just for me. That's what you said when you emphasized the word serve. I'm here to serve you.
Yeah, well, you've definitely served us today and this audience. You know, I will still call you King Kong, even though you've got a heart, even though you've got a heart of gold, and you bring to the table empathy, and you've just been dropping bombs of gold nuggets. And people really, really need to embrace your same psychology, put that into their methodology, implement technology, and that's how they can future-proof their business. Ladies and gentlemen, King Kong. Where can people follow you and continue learning from you, or get your books and all the different obviously you work with people at the highest levels, but you've provided resources for people to connect. Where can they find you to do that?
Well, I'm extremely active with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and I churn out daily posts under the hashtag passion, purpose, productivity. So it's a tiny nuggets of things and thought that can help you build, in what you would say, to build a beautiful day and a beautiful life. And that's what I do. So they can just easily search me through those places. I'm not very active with blogs. What I do is I just put on and churn out those tiny little thoughts that you can bring with you wherever you go. And life is beautiful, I think. I never think that I would come to a place and a time when someone would give me a compliment like I'm King Kong, and that's better than Godzilla, right? So I'll take that as life is beautiful.
Life is beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today. Whatever it takes, and any way I can support you, collaborate with you. I really feel like you're a kindred soul, and you obviously have a lot more experience than I do that I can learn from. So would love to, continue the relationship as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're unbelievable. King Kong, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to send a review about what you liked on this podcast or share it with somebody who would need it to definitely improve their business, building and scaling sales teams, do me a favor, like, share. It means a lot to me so that we can help others grow and live in abundance. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.